Mom!
They're calling a bad song fun again.
Time to play. Is that new trending song actually fun, or are fans just coping? It's a question that pops up in K-pop every so often, and we've all seen it happen. A particular release drops, and suddenly there's a song breaking out of the fan base bubble for all of the wrong reasons. Maybe the production is weird. Maybe the lyrics make no sense, or maybe the whole concept feels like a fever dream. Deserved or not, the song gets dragged through the mud. And not long after, defenders come out of the woodwork, swearing that it's just supposed to be fun and that we're all taking it too seriously. In my experience, whether or not a song is actually just dumb fun is a coin flip. About 50-50. Sometimes people really are just coping, trying to defend a song that deep down is just bad. Other times, yeah, the song isn't meant to be analyzed to death. It's just meant to be taken at face value and enjoyed for the ride. But that brings us to the question that's been bothering me for months. Is there a line that a song crosses where it can no longer be defended by just saying it's fun? I phrase that intentionally. The definitive answer is that it's up to people's personal preferences. Whatever appeals to you is what you'd consider the line to be. But that answer is boring. So instead, I want to explore whether there is an objective line that must not be crossed. Because to even be in this conversation, the song in question has to be doing something a little out there. And that's not new. K-pop has always had a silly, over-the-top side, especially in earlier generations. Playful, even absurd songs were not just tolerated, they were hits. That was the kind of energy that used to define the genre. Today, though, the same energy is harder to find. So, what happened? Honestly, not much. K-pop's original, mostly domestic audience still seems to have a soft spot for playful chaos, but as the genre has expanded, especially into Western markets, that kind of energy just doesn't land the same way anymore. And while I am generalizing, maybe you personally love a ridiculous release or two, here, have a cookie. Western audiences as a whole tend to treat corny as cringe and not charming. Of course, there are exceptions. I've already said how the absurdity of early K-pop was exactly what made global audiences take notice in the first place. But let's face it, Gangnam Style came out over a decade ago. The landscape has changed. K-pop's global reach brought more polish, more strategy, and a lot less room for the unserious tracks that once thrived. Still, that side of K-pop isn't totally gone. In fact, when it does show up, it often gets ridiculed more than anything else. Which brings me to the elephant in the room. I hadn't originally planned to include this in the video, but I figured it would be strange to discuss this topic without addressing the most recent example of it, Cat's Eye's new single, Gnarly. Over the last 5 days, every social media feed I have has been flooded with takes about this song, ranging from, this is the worst thing to ever happen to music, to, you just don't understand the genius. Personally, I lean towards the former. My biggest gripe with Gnarly is, unsurprisingly, the lyrics. I actually don't mind the instrumental. If you know me, you know I love loud. I love noisy. I love the feeling of my ears bleeding. But even I can't accept farting over a beat and calling it cunt. Still, the usual pattern played out. A lot of people hate it, but a small, loud group of people defend it as some kind of niche, misunderstood statement piece. That it's supposed to be fun, it's supposed to be satire, that it's meta and camp, and even more words people use loosely without even knowing the meaning of the word in order to defend an artist they like. To be fair, I do think Gnarly is trying to be self-aware and borders on being satire, albeit bad satire. The signs are obvious. The corny references, the jarring vocal delivery, the overall chaotic visual direction. It's trying to make a point about hyper-commercialized pop, and maybe even the absurdity of girl group packaging itself. And honestly, I don't even think that's a bad idea. There's definitely room in music for a well-aimed critique of how the industry turns out trends for mass consumption. But here's my personal problem with that. Even if the message is there, it doesn't land. And that is because who it is coming from. I personally can't enjoy a critique on fast food pop when it's being served up to me on a Hybe branded tray. Watching all of this unfold reminded me of watching the Barbie movie for the first time when they made a plethora of jokes about Mattel, despite the fact that it was literally produced by Mattel. Yes, the irony is technically present. Yes, there are moments where the satire makes sense on paper, but any real impact is undercut the second you remember that the very people being critiqued are also the ones profiting off of the punchline. There's no bite when the machine is laughing with you and cashing the check at the same time. Rage Against the Machine wasn't called Make Tolerable Jabs at the Machine for a reason. So even if Gnarly is meant to be satirical the way I think it is, it rings hollow. It doesn't challenge anything because there's no risk involved. It's not subversive when it's pre-approved by the system it's supposedly mocking. The call is coming from inside the house, and that just makes the whole thing feel like satire in aesthetics only, not in spirit. I have much the same issue whenever K-pop tries to do rock music. Like, yes, it technically does sound good. It has all the right elements, but it's too polished. It's too perfect to the point where it doesn't feel like it has any soul. Even if I was to give Gnarly every benefit of the doubt, it still collapses under the weight of its own hypocrisy. Because satire doesn't work in a vacuum. You can't parody a system while also relying entirely on that system for distribution, success, and validation. The reason being is that the moment it hits the market, the moment it goes live, it becomes the very thing it's trying to critique. And what's worse, it doesn't even really succeed at being good pop, which is kind of the final nail in the coffin, because if you're going to parody pop music, you still have to participate in it to some extent. You still have to work within the genre enough for people to want to listen to it. If Weird Al Yankovic made all of his songs unlistenable, he wouldn't have had a career. But Gnarly doesn't do that. It's not catchy aside from the chorus, it's not culturally resonant, and it's not especially clever, which some people might point out is the point. And again, I have to emphasize that being what you are critiquing removes the sting of the critique. And I think that's what its main flaw is. It demands the audience to do all the heavy lifting while it sits back and reaps the reward of throwing shit on a screen and having people defend it like it's a new age Mona Lisa. Plainly, it's the bottom line of comedy. If you need to explain the joke, it's not funny. And again, I ask the question, is there a point where fun stops being a valid excuse? When it comes to Gnarly, I believe the answer lies in whether you found it fun in the first place, if even ironically. For a lot of people, the answer seems to be no. Personally, it was just disappointing from start to finish. But I also don't think it's the worst thing to come out of K-pop. I would gladly listen to Gnarly every day if it meant I never had to listen to Woke Up in Tokyo again. Admittedly, I struggle to extrapolate what people find fun about Gnarly, and thusly why it obfuscates the horrible music. I don't have an answer. That's a pretty unfortunate conclusion, but an honest one. You Gnarly enjoyers lost me on this one. And I'm sure I'll get comments being like, you just don't get it. The ones who get it, get it. And in my personal experience, again, that's all I can speak from, usually that is said when they don't really have an explanation for why they enjoy the thing that they do. Which, like, no harm, no foul, I'm not going to hold that against you. I certainly have things like that when it comes to music and art in general. But I also have to side-eye you for dunking on people who cannot bring themselves to enjoy a song like Gnarly. But let's say I'm part of the problem. I mentioned at the start how some people just read too deeply into a song, and maybe that's exactly what I'm doing. Maybe I'm so hung up on the nonsensical details that I've missed the forest for the trees. In which case, the song is still bad, and no amount of good performances are going to change that. Yes, I'm aware that people have been switching up on this song since Cat's Eye hit the music show circuit. I've seen the posts, the fan cams, the sudden praise for stage presence and charisma. And I agree, these girls can perform. But let's not confuse delivery with content. A great performance can elevate a decent song, it cannot resurrect a bad one. You can put rhinestones on a pile of shit, it's still a pile of shit. So this is where I start to feel a little bit gaslit, because nothing about Gnarly as a song has changed. The lyrics are still a disjointed word salad. The hook is still riding a thin line between grating and grabbable. What's changed is that now there's a choreography to distract you from the actual music. I've seen plenty of comments online talking about the fact that now they can enjoy the song because they don't really have to pay attention to the lyrics. And I understand where that person is coming from because a lot of us who enjoy K pop, especially from an international perspective, can't actually understand the language being spoken, so this is probably the equivalent. But that's also kind of ignoring the fact that Cat's Eye isn't supposed to be K pop, at least I don't think they're supposed to be. So, if anything, this kind of comparison only exasperates things. And in a really weird way, I guess this is how I realize the real power of K pop. It is a visual medium, despite relying on music. And that means a strong stage can absolutely shift perception, even if the track itself hasn't earned it. So, no, I won't be guilt tripped into pretending Gnarly suddenly works because the group can sell it with facial expressions and footwork. That makes them good idols, it doesn't make this a good song. At the end of the day, Gnarly is just a song. A clumsy, confused, occasionally catchy attempt at fun that gets by more on vibes than actual substance. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's enough for some people. But it doesn't get a free pass just because the intent was to be unserious. If we're going to call it satire, then it needs to say something. If we're going to call it fun, then it should sound like fun and not require an interpretive essay to justify its existence. Because if we keep defending mediocrity with, you're just not supposed to think about it, then we shouldn't be surprised when the bar keeps getting lower. Honestly, if this track finds major success, which I honestly doubt it will, I wouldn't be shocked to see other companies try the same thing. If there's money to be made while doing less work, you better believe they'll take that shortcut. That being said, I don't see Gnarly making waves outside of K-pop. If someone unfamiliar with the genre heard it, they would just probably laugh in your face. So, no, Gnarly is not the worst song I've ever heard, but if this is what counts as fun, then maybe I'm not the one missing the point. Maybe the point was never really there. Anyway, that'll be it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye bye!